Hello everyone. Welcome to this YouTube channel. Um, we are going to discuss today other cognitive biases, and I am Rohit, and I am the author of this book, Decoding Gravity, Time, and Causality. And this book is basically on physics. So the reason why we are discussing cognitive biases is because I believe that psychology is the key, and that is where the physicists or the physics community is basically lagging behind, and the ignorance or lack of knowledge about psychology is the basic reason why physics has basically halted, or the foundations of physics has lagged behind since a century. And that is probably also the reason why scientists the Einstein could not decode um, the theory of everything yet. So whatever I have written in this book, Dynamic General Relativity, and which is a theory of quantum gravity and a potential theory of everything, to understand that psychology is very important. And so what we have already discussed quite a few biases in my previous lectures. So if you have not seen them, I recommend that you subscribe to the channel and you view all the videos on other cognitive biases. I have done a video on Dunning-Kruger effect and self-serving bias and belief bias. And if you want to know more about decoding gravity, time, and causality, there's an introductory lecture, so you can just go through that video as well. So whatever I'm going to talk about today, other cognitive biases, is also it's not from this book, but it's in this book, that is the Decoding Human Psyche. And this is basically the book which led me to my third book. So this is my second book, and it has a lot of psyche, a lot of stuff to understand the human psyche. And in short, in brief, some of the more important biases which are going to be very common and very important, we are going to discuss today. So without delaying it further, we'll start with the video. First, we had discussed congruence bias and confirmation bias, and Dunning-Kruger effect and self-serving bias and belief bias. So all these things we have already discussed. So in the video of self-serving bias, we had just mentioned what is called as attribution bias. Attribution bias is basically the tendency or a glitch in our mind for attributing our failures to something else rather than us, which we saw. Why it happens is because we want to maintain our self-esteem. So there is a belief in our mind that our self-esteem has to be maintained. So if someone else is hurting our self-esteem and proving me wrong, then that is not tolerated well by a conscious individual, most of them. That is because of the self-serving bias. So this attribution bias, a tendency to attribution or fundamental attribution error, is very, very common, and you have to specifically train your mind to not fall prey to this attribution bias. So the typical example of attribution bias is, let's say you have an accident. You are basically a owner of a factory, and you had an accident, and so you would attribute this accident not to something which is under your control, but which is something beyond your control, like weather or act of God or something else, rather than lack of safety measures or not training the staff adequately. All those things are in your hands. So you are more likely to attribute your failure or attribute your. So in physics, we mentioned that the failure of the physics community to reach a theory of everything is attributed to things which are beyond them, like energy of accelerators needed and all, which is beyond us. So it's not our job. It's not our fault that we are not getting the theory of everything. It's basically whatever the theory of everything demands. We just don't have that. We just don't have that technology. We need a particle accelerator of the size of the Milky Way galaxy. So these are basically the things which probably the physics community is getting it wrong and attributing their failures to something beyond them to save their faces, which is wrong. Basically, you have to give it up. So there is something called as ostrich bias. Ostrich bias is the subconscious glitch or tendency to it's basically its name is derived because ostriches bury their head inside sand. So basically you are seeing something. It's like elephant in the room fallacy. So everyone knows what is wrong, but they just don't want to see it. They just want to unsee it. So there are some problems with the physics theories, but physicists just don't want to see that. That's called as positivity bias, basically. It means that they want to just focus only on the positive aspects of their theories, and they just want to disregard the negative aspects of their theories, which is the wrong thing actually. Even the negativity bias is bad actually. It means what you focus only on the negative aspect and you disregard the positive aspects of a theory. That's also wrong. Which means that there are some good things about string theory, but there are some bad things also about string theory. So accepting that these things are bad, and I think these things are the things where you want to think in a different direction. This is very important. So if you are suffering from ostrich bias, then you will keep focusing on the positive aspects of string theory, or for that matter, whichever theory you're working on, and you keep ignoring the negative aspects, just giving some reason, rationalizing that yes, there is no other way. There's something called as bias, which is a very interesting one. A person who has a cognitive bias is usually completely blind to um, his own bias. It's also called as the blind spot bias. So that particular bias someone else can detect in you, but you yourself detecting in yourself. Basically, detecting a bias, a cognitive bias within yourselves. It basically is a process of proving yourselves wrong. So if you want to prove yourselves wrong, then you are basically proving yourselves unworthy or stupid, or you are lowering your self-esteem. So your self-serving bias will prevent it from happening. So a biased individual is less likely to understand. Basically, it will provoke a lot of anxiety, a lot of cognitive strain. So it's a strenuous activity for you. So it's called as bias. So a biased individual is less likely to accept that he is biased, although he will be biased, but he will not likely to accept it. So you can see a bias for someone else. It's like highways basically. When you're driving on a highway, your fog lights appear much less bright, but somebody else's car's fog light, they appear too bright for you. Why? Because that basically what it means is that your own biases, they will not appear that bright to you, but somebody else may have biases which you can see very nicely, because yes, this guy is already delusional guy. You know that the other person or the competitor is biased individual. So it's easier to detect biases of others, but when it comes to biases, detecting your own biases and detecting your own logical fallacies, people tend to um, look away, and they don't want to look into their own biases. So this is a bias. So it's basically a belief bias. So here again, uh, every bias which we are going to discuss today is like a belief bias based on some belief. So here one belief is that I am not biased. I can never be biased. So this kind of a belief is there. This kind of belief is not conscious. It's a subconscious belief. So this belief is subconscious belief. So I am never biased. If you have this kind of a belief, then you can never detect a bias in you. If you are unable to detect a bias in you, this bias keeps affecting your choices, then you will keep choosing the wrong things. The problem with biases is not that they themselves may not be wrong, but the choices which they influence to make. That that is where the mistake starts coming. So you will basically choose the wrong methods. You will basically choose the wrong direction of thinking. You will choose the wrong areas of research, or you will choose the wrong things to write papers on. Anyhow, so this is a bias. Now, there is something called as availability heuristics bias. Now, this is a very common bias. I don't know whether it's very useful for us in our today's discussion, but it's a very common bias, and it is the reason why um, advertising industry and marketing industry is so common. The brand recognition basically works because of the availability heuristics bias. In this bias, basically the individual, so we discussed before that there is a subconscious mind within us, and which keeps on getting programmed, and it can put urges into our conscious mind, and it is basically a default one. So if the subconscious mind puts an urge, you can actually stop that urge, or you can say, okay, I will continue with that urge. So that's how subconscious mind. So if you are not stopping it consciously, because stopping an urge consciously requires a lot of conscious effort. So it has a lazy controller basically. So the system 2, you have to activate the system 2. So the system 2 has a much more energy requirement, and you have to stop your urges. And uh, so what urges will you get actually? What subconscious mind sees, or it is available to the subconscious mind, it will give urges. Which means that let's say you are sitting in your house in the morning on a Sunday. So what exactly the question which you will ask is, what should I do today? So um, your subconscious mind may have, so there are basically millions or billions of humans on the earth who are also um, there on their Sunday in their home. So everyone may be doing something else. So you can potentially have billions of choices to choose from to do what to do. But your subconscious mind doesn't have, or your conscious mind, you don't really have um, that much time to think about so many things, so many options. You can decide, "Oh, I want to read this book, I want to read this book." There are 100 books with you, or you want to, this is basically analysis. Basically, you want to analyze what are the options which I have. So I have these 100 books, and I have Netflix, and I have this video game, and I can play chess if I want. If I want, I can go out with my wife, or I can go out with my kids, or we can go for a movie, or we can order pizza, or we can do. So there are hundreds of choices, but which choice you will make? Well, for for actually analyzing and then making a choice, you need a lot of energy. Most of them will not do that. What they will do is basically they will look for urges. So the subconscious mind, probably a few days back, you saw someone eat pizza, and your subconscious mind, for that particular urge is available to you. Or you probably saw an advertisement of a Netflix movie or a Netflix series, and you have that available with you. So the subconscious mind will put an urge that yes, I will see Netflix, and then you realize yes, that Netflix, that was a good series. It gave me happiness. It gave me pleasure. So why not? So you will continue with that. So this is what is called as availability heuristics. Now here again, the it may have some implications in physics as well. That if you are a researcher and you have basically 100 different ways of solving a problem, but if you have read more number of papers on string theory and the mathematics of string theory, then your subconscious mind has those particular things available with it. So if you have another completely different set of questions and you want solutions from them, so your subconscious mind will tend to go towards those types of solutions rather than uh, utilizing some completely different way of solving problems. So if you have, now this is very complicated, so complex. So that is the reason why it's very difficult to know if it really works for. That's why psychology is not that simple. But it is true that it is basically the mind will keep thinking in that particular direction, and it will not. It's like if you have a problem in front of you, first of all you have to define the problem, what it is, and then you have to look for what are the potential ways which we already know that have. Now if there are 10 different potential ways, but out of that only 2 are available with you, because only 2 are the ones with which you are basically you have read more about, then your subconscious mind will give an urge of using these 2 methods rather than the other 8. So the other 8 methods are also potential options which you can think of. Like if there is a need for additional gravity, so you see that the data suggests that gravity is inadequate here. Now you have already read quite a few papers on dark matter, which can give additional gravity to you, but you have less number of papers on you have read less number of papers on mod. So the fact that dark matter is there is known to you. So this is particular direction of thinking which is known to you, isn't it? So you will more likely use that rather than using some completely different out of the box thinking, like Newtonian. Newtonian dynamics has to be modified and all. So these are out of the box ways of thinking. Not all the time it works like that, but you have, for some problems you need to think out of the box. And this availability heuristics bias prevents that, basically, because your subconscious mind will keep on pestering you to use the same line of logic. So there's some different line of logic you won't be comfortable using. It's also called as illusion of reality. So if COVID is a very important example of it, actually. The typical example which is given of illusion of reality is that it's called as basically propaganda or brainwashing. So the more you are fed lies, the more you tend to believe those lies. So if you have one politician and the press is completely against you, and there are a lot of people who pay to the press to give propaganda against a particular politician, that this politician is corrupt, this is corrupt, this is corrupt. Now you are also against that particular politician. So if you read 20 news items, all of them say how bad this particular guy is, then you tend to start getting a belief, and then slowly that big belief increases. So this is called as confirmation bias, actually. So again, this is the way by which, the belief, which is initially small, then it becomes more and more and more and more, and then at last it becomes very firm. So it becomes so firm that it becomes like an illusion of reality. So you think that that is reality for you. Like that, people with beliefs like flat earth, they are like that. They had a small belief, but then they started reading, then they started interacting with more people who had the same belief, and then they had big seminars on that, and now their belief is that yes, the earth is flat, there is no question of round earth. And they have doubt about the government is fooling us. So this again goes in favor of the illusion that the government is fooling us, that the earth is round, because it wants money from us, taxpayers money. So in this particular these are the typical psychology examples, but this is a very important according to me, for physicists as well. There is a very related fallacy of logic, which is called as red herring, basically. Red herring is actually, red herring is a red fish, actually. So out of all of them, it stands apart. So in that sense, this red herring is anything which most of people will start focusing only on that, rather than focusing on what should be focused on. The typical example which I have given in my book is that environmental protection today has become almost equivalent to solar energy. Now, solar energy is actually a very poor form of energy because it is very dilute. Nuclear is more concentrated and it's much better. But there are some belief biases against nuclear, because they say that it's very dangerous and it causes radiation, and radiation is harmful, and radiation causes cancer, and all those things. People don't understand that there is normal natural radiation which is coming from the sky, which is also there. So but anyhow, I'm not here to this thing. The basic point is that there are quite a few other many important environmental issues like biodiversity crisis and insect apocalypse and extinction crisis, and all these things are because of habitat destruction and ecosystems destruction. And the point is that instead of focusing on these more important issues, the whole focus of the environment movement is on reducing emissions and solar energy, and everybody wants to buy an electric car. Now, how much habitat destruction it is going to cause if you completely transform the economy from petrol into electric? Nobody gives a damn about it. Which means that yes, solar energy is good and electric cars are also good. You have to do it at some point in time, but you have to also think about all these things. Like so it has basically become a red herring. So these are important. GHG emissions reduction is important. It's not that it's not important, but only that is not important. So there are more important other things also, like extinction crisis is very important, biodiversity crisis is very important, but these are not given the due importance. Why? Because of availability heuristics. Why? Because only those emissions reduction, that is, the media covers it so much, and the coverage given to these other things is very poor. So that is why people tend to think that environment is equivalent to pollution. So this is wrong actually. Environment is, if you want to take care of the environment, you have to take care of the trees. But contrary to that, the climate movement says that, chop off all the old grown forests because they are not good carbon sinks. So you chop them off and you replant them, and then they will take up more carbon, which is a foolish thing actually, because deforestation is one of the prime causes of habitat destruction. And mono, I mean, if you plant only one kind of trees, that is very bad for the ecosystems, because the ecosystem cycles are destroyed anyhow. So this basically, in physics, what we are talking about is string theory. So string theory has become a red herring basically. So everybody wants to talk only about string theory. There's no other theory which anybody else wants to talk about. Again, everybody wants to talk about black holes, or everybody wants to talk about what is there inside a black hole, but nobody wants to actually think about how to describe light, how to describe wave particle duality. So these are basically assumed to be already solved problems, and everybody wants to discuss on quantum gravity. Yes, quantum gravity means they want to discuss Big Bang, and they want to discuss only within the black holes. Outside the black holes, all the questions are already solved. That's the logic. So these things become red herring. So everyone wants to talk about that. Now there's something called as anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is what? There's something called as anchoring bias, belief bias, confirmation bias, ABC cycle. Now, to explain that, when we are born, our subconscious mind has very few beliefs actually. So it's like a blank paper, and slowly what events happen, accordingly our beliefs start developing. So some guy might develop the belief that guns are important, and some other guy might think that guns are dangerous. So ideologies form in this particular manner. So the initial anchor, so it is so studies have basically shown that anchors are very important. That is what anchoring beliefs, where it's like a seed actually. It's like a seed of thought. When a particular thought is seeded in your mind, and then it becomes slowly big. So it's like that belief is seeded. So in a Hindu household, elders are respected. You should respect your elders. They will do namaste, namaskar. So to the elders. So these are anchoring beliefs that you have to respect your elders. Like that, in Christianity, they say that you should not lie, or uh, you should not cheat somebody, or you should love everyone. Like that, these are anchoring thoughts, and these anchors are confirmed slowly. Initially it's just like a thin line, then it becomes a thicker line, then again it becomes a thicker line, and then it becomes a thick line. So like that, the belief evolves. In physics also, it is very relevant that it is basically based on what anchors you are getting, what anchoring beliefs you are getting. So if a physics undergraduate fellow comes to a string theory fellow, and he starts reading string theory material more. Then he gets an anchoring bias that string theory is right. And slowly, he keeps on increasing. So it's more and more confirmation bias, more and more string theory related articles he reads. He doesn't read any other theory. He doesn't read any other potential way of solving it. So it is like string theory becomes his whole and soul. So basically, this anchoring bias followed by confirmation bias leads to a very strong belief bias within him. So this is called as ABC cycle. So here anchoring bias is also important for physics. For that matter, anchoring bias as well as confirmation bias and congruence bias, these are extremely important for any researcher. Now there's something called as overconfidence bias. The typical example which is given is investors who are investing. So they want to, they, a particular angel investor is there. He invests in one particular portfolio, and he makes some money. So again he says, okay, my choices are good. I'm very good at investing. So he puts at some another company thinking that yes, my investments are good. And again he makes money off it. So the third time he becomes overconfident. Yes, that I am very good. So now he keeps on taking more and more risks, and he invests in more and more risky companies, and then suddenly their overconfidence goes down. That is what is very common actually. The basic thing in this overconfidence bias is that there's an underlying belief, small successes in our life, and we tend to think that we are geniuses, so we cannot be wrong at all. So if you have success in your life, that's good, but that whatever success you might have, even if you have a Nobel Prize, or even if you have a very big triple PhD, or if you have a very big position in a big scientific institute, that doesn't mean that you cannot be wrong. So if you have this attitude that I can never be wrong, that is overconfidence bias. So again, a very different, similar but in a different direction of thinking is that the belief that a person who does not have any of these successes can never be right. So only if there is a PhD attached to a person, or only if the person has attachment to a very big institute, only if the person has 1000 papers published with physics, only then he can be right. Again, this is also overconfidence bias, because you are basically playing, you have very little evidence or very little knowledge about one particular person, whether he can be right or wrong. Yes, if you analyze all, so if you look at a book and if you see that this guy is very poor, I mean, he's not having any, he is from a poor country and he is not having any publications and he is not having any, so we'll come to that actually. This is called as author bias. So you again, he's from a poorer race, or he's from a religion which is not very well known, and he's not, she is a female rather. So this again misogyny has come. So these are all very intricately related, and these are absolutely common biases. Absolutely very. So as soon as you look at that book, You know that this guy will not know anything. What will he tell me about string theory? I know I am the genius in string theory. What will he tell me? He cannot tell me. He cannot be right. Now you read the book, analyze the book, and you come to that conclusion that he is wrong. There is high likelihood that he might be wrong. But if you assume that he is wrong even before seeing his arguments and analyzing them, and then it is wrong. Then it is overconfidence bias, because you are completely neglecting the fact that you have almost no understanding of what he is saying, or what are his arguments, or what his theory is, or what are his methods. So assuming that um, the author is useless just because he is is belonging to one particular community or one particular country. This is a typical overconfidence bias. And so this author bias is very related to this. So I can never be wrong bias, basically. So this is basically a belief, subconscious belief in the mind of those who are successful. That is, they have published hundreds of papers, or they have they are related to big physics institutes in some big countries, and a small country, a person from, it's like typically typical description of Einstein. Swiss, a clerk, an ordinary clerk who is working in the Swiss patent office. So if this overconfidence bias, unfortunately, today's peer review is exactly that. Today, a small ordinary clerk who has no attachment to any institute can never write a paper. His paper won't be accepted by the peer review community or committee, and the editor will just throw away the paper even before reading the paper. So there's no question of a person who doesn't have any PhD and who doesn't have any attachment to a big institute to publish a paper. There's no question of it. Yeah, you have to pay, and there'll be poor quality journals who would want to, you'll have to pay a hefty amount of thousands of dollars to publish your paper, and that paper, the journal will be a very poor quality journal. So good quality journals, for them, the biases are extreme. So they just don't, any deviation from their core beliefs or preconceptions, even though they are just beliefs, they don't want their such kind of papers to be published, which is wrong. Actually, it's called as selection bias. So they are selecting only those papers which they are pro their preconceived notions. So if there any paper is there who goes slightly against their preconceived notions, they will think 100 times. And if this particular paper is written by someone who is not having any institute attachment, then it will just be rejected. It will be thrown away into dustbin. So this is a peer review process of 2022, which is very bad actually. It's so there is something called as choice supportive bias. What is choice supportive bias? Is when you have spent maybe 1 year or 2 years or 10 years thinking about one particular line of thinking, then the other line of thinking becomes wrong automatically. Means what? You have made a choice. So you have dedicated 10 years of life in loop quantum gravity. And then you start thinking, there are some papers who come that say string theory is better than loop quantum gravity. You say, no, it's not. I'll tell you why. So your brain automatically starts accepting only positives of the loop quantum gravity. It starts overlooking the negatives of loop quantum gravity because you have chosen that, and it starts focusing only on the bads of the string theory, and it disregards the positives of string theory, which means what? That you are, so the same thing is done by string theorists for loop quantum gravity. So they don't want to look at the positives of loop quantum gravity, and they just want to focus on the negatives, and they just say, no, this is wrong. Loop quantum gravity cannot be right. The same thing loop quantum gravity guys do for string theory. No, string theory is rubbish. It cannot be right. So these are wrong things. Basically, you have to be in the middle. Nature, there's only one there's only one right theory. Basically, there cannot be 100 theories, but every theory, according to me, is basically having some pros, positives, and some negatives. So you have to basically be able to focus on what is positive and what is negative in a particular theory. And so string theory can be partially right, can be partially wrong. You have to pick up what is good from what is bad in a particular theory. Same with loop quantum gravity it's basically every attempt to look at the ultimate reality should be you should honor it, or you should, so you have to be able to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. So this is choice supportive bias is again, I can never make the wrong choice belief bias. Means subconscious belief that how can I make a wrong choice? If I have made a right choice, it has to be right. This is a wrong belief actually. It's a subconscious belief, and many of the times people who have this belief subconsciously, they don't want to look at it. So it's like a bias means they don't want to acknowledge that they have that belief. Nature has not taken any contract with you that whatever belief you have has to be the right belief. So if you have chosen to do research on one particular belief, and if some another particular belief turns out to be right, you should be happy. Yes, that we came to know what is the right thing. There should not be. It should not happen that if ultimately loop quantum gravity becomes a better theory than string theory, then all string theorists should be happy about it. They should not feel bad about it, isn't it? But reality is not that. Most of the string theorists will say will be either if dark matter ultimately it turns out that Mond is right, dark matter is wrong, then all the dark matter people should actually feel happy about it. They should not be uh, they should not feel upset about it. Why should they be upset? But that's because they are prone to or not immune from psychological problems. So they are not they are basically falling prey to the psychology. There is something called as bandwagon effect. Bandwagon effect is what? When you choose which particular theory is right theory for you to do research and which theory is wrong. How do you choose that? Well, there are many criteria actually, but one of the criteria which is very commonly used is okay, 1,000 people are working on string theory, and maybe 500 people are working on loop quantum gravity. So either of the two should be here. But there is one more theory. Nobody's working on that. No, I don't want to work with that. The probability that that is very small. The probability, so 100 people, 1,000 people are working on string theory. Let me also work on string theory. Well, 500 people are working on loop quantum. This is less likely. 500 only 500. No, I think that's so. This is a very wrong way of thinking. Actually, it's very wrong, because it's like that's how sheep think. There are two ways, and majority of the sheep are going on the right side. So the sheep will also say, okay, but on the left side there might be much more food to eat. But no, they will go on the right side only. Because what? Because all the other sheep are going on the right side. It is like this actually. When you have a subconscious acknowledgement that yes, thousands of physicists are working on it, so you must be right. There is more likelihood that I'll succeed in this, that it will be right rather than wrong. So there is a subconscious pleasure, or rather the strain is avoided. So you are you're not getting that subconscious cognitive strain. So the other way around is also, it works the other way around also. Like you get a lot of subconscious strain if you are the lone person, that you are going around again against the stream. So most of them are saying that general relativity is right, and block time is the time, or time is not absolute at all, time is relative. And one particular person, lone person, says that relativity may be wrong. In fact, VSL type of general relativity is correct, not general relativity, but VSL type of general. So there's a single person, not thousands of physicists believe the contrary. Similar way, Copenhagen interpretation. Thousands of people are thinking that Copenhagen interpretation is right. Only one or two handful of people uh, have the guts to say that Bohmian mechanics is right. So it's bandwagon effect, puppeting. One person is saying, and most of the others are saying contrary thing. No, the one person who is saying like that is very less likely to be right. That attitude is there, which is wrong actually. Science doesn't work like that. Even if one person is saying it and thousands of people are saying the other way around, that doesn't make any. It's not democracy. Science doesn't work on democracy. Science it works on logic, on principles, on analysis, on interpretation. So that's why if one particular theory is better at all these interpretations, and it is better at giving. Um, so that is the beauty of general relativity, basically. That it gave with so little so little assumptions. It gave so many predictions, and so many of these predictions, it keeps coming. It keeps coming. Predictions of general relativity keep coming true. So that's the beauty of a good theory, that you should have minimum number of assumptions, and the theory should be falsifiable. It should make some predictions which can be tested, testable predictions it should make. So we'll go to this bandwagon. Bandwagon effect is what, how many number of physicists are working. Do you choose research based on that? That's a wrong way of thinking, actually. There are quite a few related fallacies of logic. One of them is the sunk cost fallacy. What? That we have invested $1,000 or maybe $100 million on building a big particle accelerator or a dark matter detector. Now, this is a very common, very important sunk cost fallacy, common logical fallacy. So we have spent $1 billion on CERN LHC. It did not turn out to be as good as wanted, as we wanted. It did not show hidden dimensions. It did not show. It showed Higgs boson, but that's it. It stopped over there. We wanted supersymmetric particles. We wanted dark matter particles. We wanted hidden dimensions. We never got any of that. Now what? The sunk cost fallacy says that you uh, dark matter. We have invested so much in dark matter, so we continue investing more. We'll continue with the same line of thinking with more money pumped in it. So we'll now the $1 billion investment was not good enough. So let's put $10 billion. That's the sunk cost fallacy. So logic says that if one particular direction is not worked for you, you should think of some another direction. But that's not what physicists are thinking. So they are basically going into the logical fallacy of sunk cost fallacy. So one particular uh, amount of money is already gone now in one particular direction of thinking. So if you, instead of changing the direction of thinking, it's like I'll tell you a more easier example than that. Think that you plan to go for you plan to go for shopping in a mall, and you in the morning when you get up you plan, yes, I'm going to go in the afternoon. I want to buy this is 1 2 3 4 these items I have to buy from the shopping mall. And then when you are leaving, you get a call from your friend that the mall is closed because of COVID restrictions. The mall is closed. So the right thing to do for you is, no, I should just go tomorrow, basically. Or maybe I should delay my plan. Here's the right thing. Abandon the plan. Abandon the plan completely. The sunk cost fallacy is what? Fallacy of no. Let me go till the mall and see what happens, whether it is really right or wrong. So you are basically whatever negative information you have got, you disregard that negative information and you still go ahead with the, and you have already spent half of your morning discussing, and you have spent all that time, so that time is gone. So you want to spend more time and confirm by going, you want to spend more petrol, and you want to go and see with your own eyes that the mall is closed, and then you will say, okay, that was a bad idea, and then we'll again come back home. That is called as sunk cost fallacy. It's a fallacy of logic. So you are basically disregarding the negative information which you have got. You've got some information which suggests that this particular bigger particle accelerator is not working. You're not getting what you thought you would get, but you want to spend more on that. That's sunk cost fallacy. Again, author bias, I had already mentioned that the a theory of everything is basically based on logic, and it's based on arguments. So if you want to judge a particular theory, you have to judge it on the basis of arguments which it makes, not on the basis of who is the author, from which country the author comes from, what is the profession of the author, how many publications are with the author, what institute the author belongs to. So these are biases actually, because this is basically instead of the arguments which the theory makes, you are basically judging the book by its cover. You have to judge a book based on what is written in it. Like even more deeper thinking of that is that you have brought a new novel, let's say, and you like that book actually. So you start the book and you read the first para and you find some mistake in English. What rubbish! This author is making a mistake. He doesn't know how to write. So this author is this book is useless. You will keep it aside. So you have actually judged the content of the book based on one paragraph. Just because one mistake happened, you just threw it aside. It could be a gem of a book. Just maybe some mistakes. That particular author did not have enough money for spending on editing. That's it. So that doesn't mean that the book cannot be a gem. Even if there are some mistakes in the book, which are maybe punctuation errors or maybe some mistakes of English, grammatical mistakes. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the knowledge which the book is going to give me is not. It's there. The knowledge is there, which is available with you. The fallacy over here is that with one mistake, you have basically judged the entire book, the contents of the book. So you have jumped into conclusion that the whole book is wrong, or the whole book is useless, or the time spent on the whole book. The book has no way of giving you some good knowledge, which is the wrong fallacy. It's a fallacy because you are disregarding the fact that you have not read the book at all. So if you read the book completely and then you come to the conclusion that yes, the book is useless, the author is useless, okay, good, fine, no problem. You've chosen you have chosen the right way. You have seen the whole book, and then you decide that yes, I don't understand this book, and then this book, whatever author arguments the author makes are wrong. Okay, that's fine. But even not reading the book at all, and you have concluded that the book is wrong, that comes under author bias. So these are all the cognitive biases. I hope that you understood some of them at least, and you would take care that you don't fall for the traps which these cognitive biases make. And I hope that if you are still hearing this, then congratulations. That is, I really think that you are the one who would definitely understand the theory. So I recommend that you buy the book, and thank you very much for your attention.